Well, hello again and welcome to the Mansfield Matters podcast, the show for the fans and by the fans. Why? Well, of course, because Mansfield matters. The season may well be long dead and buried by now with the World Cup just around the corner, but it doesn't mean that the Mansfield Matters podcast crew are going to go away. Sorry. We're here week in, week out, taking a trip down memory lane, all raising money for the Alzheimer's Society. All the links are in the description if you want to donate. Today, as you may well be able to see, we're not in the fabulous Cafe Lounge in Mansfield because we've taken a day trip. Nathan's dad Mick has brought us out on the road. He's over in the background. Say hello, Mick.
Hi.
There you go, you can hear Mick in the background. And we've made it to sunny Sheffield and delighted and very thankful to be welcomed into the lovely home of Micky Boulding, Stags legend of course. And Bobby Hassel said to us on the last episode, just look out for the biggest house in Sheffield. And Nathan and Simon, he wasn't wrong, was he?
No, not at all.
Fantastic stuff. Obviously, Micky had two spells with the club. I think me and Nathan probably remember the sort of 2006 to 2008 sort of era a little bit more. Simon, you'll remember a bit more than that.
I don't know.
You don't know? Well,
I don't know.
I question it some weeks.
Yeah.
What do you remember then about today's guest?
I remember him being...
Be kind.
We already said.
Yeah. If I remember, you were quite quick off at mark, to be honest. Good finisher of football as well. You knew where the net was anyway, let's put it that way, which for Mansfield, they're few and far between. But I just remember him being quick and a good goal scorer.
And Nath, this one's one of your picks, of course.
Yep.
You have obviously liaised with Micky in the past over various charity events. Tell us why you wanted to make the day trip down here then to Sheffield.
Well, the point of doing this series is to go back into the memories, the greatest memories of of the club, and I'd put Micky up there. Absolutely, he's a legend, and he's been at the club twice. Played a lot of games for us, and he was there. Like I say, for myself, I think I obviously remember more of the 2000s, times. And it's strange because he was part of a squad which eventually, we did get relegated. But you look at the talent that was in that squad, and you sometimes wonder how that actually happened because we had some top players there, with Micky included, and that's why I just wanted to sort of, it'd be great to relive those times.
Yeah, and that's certainly something we're going to do over the next hour or so here on the trip down memory lane. If you're enjoying what you're watching, whether you're watching it tonight, this morning, whenever you're watching it, or whether you're listening to it on iTunes, make sure you hit that donate button. All the links and all the details that you need are in the description. Really need your support on this for a fantastic charity. More on that later on when me and Nathan pop round to Kevin and Sue Bird's house. But Micky, thank you very much for welcoming us into your fantastic
Thanks for coming
home.
over.
It's great to get out of Mansfield really and come and see something else. And Nathan mentioned the relegation season. Well, let's go back to the very, very start. How did your journey with Mansfield Town begin?
Well, Mansfield for me was the club that gave me my chance in football. And it was through Ivan and Billy Dearden. Otherwise, I might not have had a career at all in the game. They gave me my chance, and I think, I always look at Mansfield and they produce, so many players. Like I think if they could actually hang on to the players that they produce, they'd be sat in the Championship probably. It was Ivan. I was training with Doncaster Rovers, and Ivan invited me over to play a game. Played half a game at Hucknall, and when Ivan had got me over, he'd got me over as a left winger. So he got me over as left wingers. He said we need left wingers, and so I turned up at Hucknall, and they said you're a left winger, and I said no, I'm a centre forward. And I can remember Ivan looking at me because he'd obviously invited me over, and he was like, and I was like, no, I'm definitely centre forward. And so they went, right, okay, we'll give you 45 minutes up front. Played 45 minutes, managed to get a goal, then got invited in to train a couple of games, and then we played Worksop with the first team and got 45 minutes there, and then Billy offered me a contract the next morning.
So do you ever think it might have been different if they'd have said to you, no, well, Ivan said you're a left winger, so we're sticking you on the left wing?
Yeah,
or
you're in the lap of the gods, and football, one manager might love you and the next manager, can't stand the sight of you. So, you do need that bit of luck. And luckily, you know, I had the right people there at the right time.
To be fair though, you had one hell of a backup plan. You were quite handy with a racket at one time, weren't you?
Well, I actually still had my world ranking at the time. I didn't tell anybody, anyone in the tennis fraternity, and so it was like halfway through the season, I think the first goal I scored against Shrewsbury, and then suddenly I got a barrage of calls from all the tennis players saying, what's happened? But I was just, I mean, you know, to play professional sport is fantastic. Play professional football, you know, is always like a dream for me. And I used to pinch myself, you know, thinking I can't believe somebody wants to actually pay me to do this. So I always took one season at a time and just thought, however long it lasts, you know, I'll just enjoy it. And it was brilliant. And yeah, Mansfield was the catalyst for the career. Yeah,
kind of was the start and the finish. Although you went on to Bradford after your second spell.
Yeah.
And then obviously a bit of a spell with Barnsley and Derby.
Yeah. What you're saying, it was the finish at Mansfield?
Yeah. I was trying to do a teamless link, but there was an opportunity to come back for a third time, wasn't there?
Yeah. So I came back and trained. So I'd just come in to train, and then ended up playing in a reserve game, a pre-season game against Sheffield United, and then played against Barnsley, and then got a call from Barnsley manager at the time, who then said, we want to sign you. And they're obviously, you know, sat in the Championship, and you know, I just thought, you know, it's the last roll of the dice.
And we were conference at the time.
Yeah. So there was obviously a massive gap, and I just thought, you know, it's last roll of the dice, really.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we'd have loved to see him come back. I remember that game. I don't know if either you two remember that.
I do. I remember that. I remember we was at that game, wasn't we? Me and my dad, and I remember there was a lot of excitement. The fact that we had, you know, that he was there. Wasn't Rory there as well?
Yeah.
A lot of excitement, because there was rumours before the games about who these trialists were going to be, and then obviously once you get there, obviously he was recognisable. The fact that you know they've been at the club, so there's a lot of excitement about, you know, the fact that both of you could have been returning for the conference days, really.
Yeah.
Let's have a little mention of Rory, of course. You were obviously at the club with him in 2006 or 2008 and came back for that little trial. And you're still working quite closely with him as well.
Yeah, well, he actually lives here as well. So
Rory just live here?
Yeah, he might actually just walk in any minute.
That would be so funny.
That's bad though.
I like how your dad now, your dad Nathan is now looking out the window, looking out.
We like Rory obviously went and played for Accrington, and he went to Bradford with me, and then Accrington, then he went off up to Scotland for a few years. You know, I got up there and watched quite a few of the games, and that. So there was some, you know, he had some pretty big games. I can remember him playing against Celtic for Dundee in the semi-final of the Scottish Cup at Hampden Park. Packed Hampden Park was really proud, you know, to see him up there and that. So yeah, it was good. And then
it would have been electric.
Yeah.
Have you pre-warned him that you're doing this today? So he won't just walk in and be like, what's going on? Why is he like
he's so forgetful that he'll probably just walk in and start swearing or something.
There's nothing wrong with that. We started off with Ian Boulding, so that's fine. Obviously, this is obviously about a trip down memory lane. So let's go back to that. Obviously, you played with Ian Boulding. What do you remember of him then? Because he was dishing up some dirt on you and some other players.
Really?
So, and Bobby Hassel was.
Bobby Hassel,
We'll leave that to Nathan for later on in the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, probably memory's probably a bit short on, you know, back then. But I mean, Bo, he was always, you know, his life and soul. You know, in the dressing room and that, he always had plenty to say for himself.
Can you imagine that?
I'm just, all the stories I've got are definitely not repeatable on camera.
To be fair. Ian Boulding's episode, we did put a warning out before it. It's
really?
gone down very well. Yeah. So please,
I don't want to put over that.
So please,
I'll leave that to Bo.
Can we please just have one little one?
I'm trying to think of. So I mean, there's a lot of
people literally screaming at the screens now, saying, "Craig, you've got to ask the questions." So.
Yeah, I mean, there was there's a lot of stories, but I really can't. Don't think I can repeat. I mean, Gary Tallon, most of them are about Gaz.
Yeah, but he was a character. I reckon.
Yeah. But if there's, I couldn't repeat.
We'll push him again on that later, boys. We won't let it down.
I can remember. I can remember one. We had a Christmas do. I can remember Mark Blake, and like everyone thinks, and he'd ended up like dressing up. He'd got these like skin tight leggings that he'd borrowed off his missus. He'd got like boots that just like silver boots. A massive fur coat, this like huge wig, glasses on, and he said his missus driving him into Nottingham, and she went, well, on the plus side, no one's going to recognise you. And he said he got out the car and he was walking down the street, and he said this lad's walked past and gone, right, Blakey. And so he's like coming, but I mean, yeah, that's probably about as safe a story as I've got.
Please say you've got a photo of that.
Yeah,
pop that into the video.
Picture somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh dear me. I'm sure there's plenty more which we can pick your brains on later on. But let's go back to that squad, because as Ian Boulding sort of gave us that insight of it was quite jokey, quite a lively challenge. You sort of mentioned when you were coming through with the young lads like Liam Lawrence, Leroy Williamson, Craig Disley, that sort of era. What was that dressing room like? Because that was essentially the side which went on to win promotion for us. Yeah,
I mean, really lively dressing room, and I think like the older players there as well. They created the that team spirit. I just thought of another story actually.
Yeah, please do.
Dave Linnigan. So Linny was. He was a scary man at the best of times. So he just wasn't somebody that you would play any sort of practical joke on. And I'd like gone home. I was driving home from training, and I've got a call on my mobile, and it's Linny, who would never have normally called me. So I've answered the phone, and he's like, because you've been putting deep heat in my underpants. He goes, I don't know if I can say the word, but he said, he said my bollocks are purple. Yeah, because I'm gonna kill someone. And so it ended up. I don't know if you can remember him, John Andrews.
Yeah,
so John Andrews.
At least we all looked at sight and then.
I remember him. All these names I remember. Yeah.
So John Andrews had thought it funny to go around putting deep heat in people's underpants, and he'd put it in Linny's underpants. Well, John took a week off training. He wasn't seen for a week because he obviously didn't realise he put it in Linny's, and it was just like.
Did anyone pop round to his house to make sure he was still alive, still breathing?
Yeah, it was just like, But,
I think that's what Bobby said in last week's episode about that sort of thing happened quite a lot those days, but it doesn't really happen anymore, does it? Sort of that sort of the pranky side and that sort of joking side of football it's not there as much as it used to be. Really.
Yeah, like I met up with Bob, a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying that he said, everything's got so serious, and like all the players, it's like he said you have to be careful how you speak to them and everything. I mean, like the older lads, they, when we first said, they'd be verging on torture. There's people locked in skips in the middle of the pitch. People doused down in boot polish, everything. It was like.
What was the worst you ever? First of all, what was the worst?
I can remember Ali Asher getting locked in a skip, pushed down the stand, and then left in the middle of the pitch. And I think it was a groundsman who ended up having to break the lock. But I don't know, how long they just left him there. But But any lip or cheekiness, you know, it was like, you know, they really come down hard on you. But I think that, you know, that was part of the learning curve, and nobody got too big for the boots, really.
What was the worst one you ever administered that you would want to admit to being a part of without?
I was never part of it. Like I was one of the young ones. I was like hiding in the corner. Yeah,
Trying to get away.
I was so quiet and shy. I just try and, you know, literally try and keep my head down. Yeah.
I mean, it's quite interesting because obviously when you came back to the club, you brought your younger brother Rory with you.
Yeah.
And obviously,
well, Rory was actually there before me. Yeah. So when I came back, so I'd actually finished for a year, and then I ended up going to Rotherham, and it was Rory who'd gone through Ivan again. Rory was at Rotherham, and Rory had gone to Mansfield, and it was through Rory that I ended up going back. So he was there and training, and I think Ivan had spoken to Rory to see what I was doing, you know, and he'd said, you know, come in.
Were you ever sort of a little bit obviously protective of older brother over Rory sometimes when it came to the dressing room banter, or were you dishing it out on him?
Yeah, no, because I mean Rory's always been a lot more vocal than me, so he's always, you know, he tells everyone what he thinks of them, and he tell me what to do most of the time. And it's same at Bradford. He was like, you know, he's one of those who's like, really confident, and I'd probably be, just a bit quieter and
trying to rein him in a little bit.
Yeah.
I can imagine that. It's quite funny to sort of see hear you saying that about Rory being the more confident one, because you sort of think, you know, the younger brother would sort of stay in the shadows a bit. But and it's interesting to know that Rory was there before. But you mentioned Ivan Hollett. Tell us a little bit more about Ivan, because I think he's a name which, for many supporters of the club, will recognise now we've said it and remember him. And he brought through some class players. So what was Ivan like as a character? Because he was there for longer than many managers, many groundsmen, things like that. He was there for a while.
I mean, Ivan, and I've told him many a time, you know, he was the reason that, I played football. But he was he was brilliant. He was brilliant, and he was so encouraging. You know, he'd fill you with confidence. You know, he'd talk to you all the time. It's like, obviously when I arrived and that, it was like, you know, I was raw, but I'd got that pace, you know, and he'd fill you with confidence to, you know, go at people and just be like, you know, he'd come up to you and tell you, and like say, you know, you're playing against this guy, he's slow, he'll be petrified, you know, if you go at him, and he gave you that belief, you know, to go out and you know, and play without holding back. He obviously brought in every player that Mansfield has. He was the scout. He was the one who was going looking at all the players. You know, so all these players that came in, you know, especially the younger lads, it was all down to him.
It's quite interesting to hear that, isn't it, boys? Because I think, as we say, he was at the club for a very long time, responsible for all these younger players as well. And
like Bobby, Diz, Liam, Leroy, you know, Bucko, all of them.
Danny Bacon.
Danny,
as well.
All of them come through. Yeah.
Does the club miss a character like that? Do you think we've not really got anyone that we know of? Sort of, because everyone knew of Ivan Hollett, didn't they? I mean,
I think the problem is when you don't have someone like that, you miss out on so much talent. And what you're doing is you're going out and you're buying players, because it's like, obviously the fans, it's like you're coming through as a youngster. Once you start scoring in the reserves, like the fans see that and they're like, you know, this is a good player. Like get him on. Whereas if you're signing someone who's inexperienced, who's going straight into the first team, people are like, who have we signed here?
I think that's where the Radfords got it right.
Yeah, the Radfords.
The youth team,
Yeah.
they've won it 3 years on track.
Yeah.
To air and
Bring
see
some
these names
talent
coming
in,
through it,
yeah.
you're thinking,
Yeah.
let's give them a chance
Yeah.
to see what they can
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
We've not had that for a long time, have we?
Yeah.
Certainly like that for a long time. What about Ivan Hollett then, boys? Well, as I was saying there, to know that he was responsible for so many of those good players, is the club, as we say, missing a character like that?
I think we're trying to rebuild it in some ways. I think that's where obviously when we went out of the league, that the whole academy, obviously we couldn't, it died, didn't it? So we're now at that stage at the club where that is being rebuilt. Obviously I don't know who's sort of doing the scouting, but it looks like obviously Ivan, obviously, but his record goes to show that we had some absolutely incredible players there. They've all gone on to do, massive things in their career, and that's exactly what we need now. And this is one thing that I'm looking forward to about next season a little bit. I think for all the stick that David Flitcroft's had, the one thing that's always gone in his favour, I think, is that he's passionate about bringing the youth players through, and I think that's what we want. We want to see players playing for the shirt, and we just hope that the youth team have been doing great. We just hope that there's some talent in there, and the scouting has been good, and those players will start coming back through in a Mansfield Town shirt.
Yeah. I mean, it means a lot more to a younger player playing for your local team. So you look back and you got Bobby and you got Liam and you got Craig. They come through
Disney,
the youth.
not me. I know.
Yeah, not
in
you.
Physical condition to play football. Don't worry.
He just means more, like what Nathan says, it means more to them, like wearing the shirt, coming through as like a local lad playing for their local team, and they want to do well. And it just goes to prove when we won promotion all them years ago, that it means something to them.
You can even look at the financial side of the club as well. These players are, talented. They're always going to go on to bigger and better things. And you look at some clubs like the Crews. When you look at lower down the league, Crew bring through some good players. Port Vale do. You've got some teams that do very well just by bringing through their youth players, putting them into the first team, and they go on to do better things. And you look at higher up in the leagues, Premiership, for example, Southampton. They're probably the best at doing it, in my opinion. So if we can get a similar format, even Barnsley, like Bobby Assel said, they've got a great setup there, haven't they? So that's what I think we need as a club, and I think that's what the Radfords want as a club as well, and that's why they've invested so much into the youth setup.
It certainly is, and I think it's hopefully for us, maybe in a couple of years' time, going to start to replicate that sort of late 90s, early 90s side, which Mick, you sort of came into having been plucked from that sort of tennis background.
Like the nucleus of that team that got the promotion, they've been playing together since they were 15 years old. And it's like, and then the players they brought in, people like Chrissy Greenacre,
Legend.
Absolute legend, like brilliant player, but he, like, great guy, great character, brought so much to the dressing room. And he was like, I can remember going on away trips, and it's like, with the experience of playing for the teams, you go away, you go back to your room, and you might socialise a little bit with the other players, but you go back, like back in those days, we used to be, we'd be sat watching TV in someone's room. There'd be like, 6 or 7 of us all squashed in. We were so relaxed around each other, and that helped so much on the pitch. And also as well as you're not frightened to give each other a bollocking or anything, and we could talk to each other the way we wanted.
Is that what you think made that 01-02 side so successful? The fact that they'd all sort of grown together and they'd all made that transition from youth reserve to first team with this almost in some respects the same coach in Billy Dearden and then obviously Stuart Watkins.
Yes, but they were also really, really good players. It's like, from, as soon, like the first time I played with them, like I'd come from training with Donna, first team, went into reserve game with those guys. I can remember Bobby was playing centre half in that game, 17 years old against Hucknall, first team rule, big lads and that.
Would have been a decent level back then as well.
Yeah, and we Leroy, the skills, the time in the pass. I mean, Liam, like brilliant player, and it was just like there was just a lot of class in that team. And it's like you see players who, young players who people, talk about, and they lack in certain areas. Whereas that team, that it was such a good side.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, we certainly remember that sort of era well, and that promotion. We'd love to see that sort of creep in again. Which spell did you enjoy best then? The first time or the second time? Because the second time, for you on a personal note, you were banging goals left, right, and centre, but on the pitch it sort of went the wrong way.
Yeah, I mean, like the difference for me was obviously it was at both ends of my career. So I was a different player really to the first one. I mean, the first. I mean, like Mansfield was always such a brilliant club for me, and I always felt totally relaxed. I felt like at home there. The squad that we had, that the second spell, it was a really good team. I played in a lot worse teams that have done a lot better, and it was I was talking to Rory about this the other day, and it is baffling. It's baffling how that squad got relegated, because there were so many good players. I mean, one of the reasons was Bap got injured. So he missed.
He was the cornerstone.
Yeah, he missed a lot of games that season, and I think with him, and Bucko playing centre halves, I think we'd have done a lot better. There was, there's probably a couple of areas that you'd have strengthened. We
always felt sort of the goalkeeping area, because Muggleton was back end of his career. His knee was. I think he was open with that.
Muggs has been a great keeper, but I think he was at the back end of his career, and I think he was there in a coaching role. Whitey had not played that many games, and I think to be thrust into a relegation battle is tough. I think that we possibly needed a late 20s.
So he was what, 18, 19 at the time? He wasn't very old, was he?
No. And it is a high pressure position. One mistake and you've given a game away.
Did it make it worse, the fact that there was obviously off the pitch, that was the time where it was really getting to boiling point between the supporters and Keith Haslam, the then chairman?
Yeah.
Did that not help on the pitch, especially at home, because of everything that was sort of going off? Did that sort of distract you a little bit?
Yeah, I think the word to sum that whole scenario is, I think it was pretty toxic, and I think that, obviously the fans, had a problem with Keith and how everything was being run, but it didn't help the playing side. And it would have been nice to have somehow kept that, away from actual match.
I think us as supporters, looking back at that as well, boys, we remember that time. It was always animosity. And I think when things started to go wrong on the pitch, when we concede sort of first 20 minutes or so, we'd not necessarily turn particularly on the players, but the frustration would then boil over to the board, and then it just created a negative atmosphere. And when you supporting in a negative atmosphere, you can feel it. So it must have been the same on the pitch as well.
I think what it is as well in sport is confidence plays such a major part, and it's like the difference between a team getting relegated and being in the playoffs, can be down to confidence. And it's like I've seen players when they're unconfident, they couldn't trap a bag of sand, yet they're good players. And I think that the whole feeling around the club, there was like a negativity around the club, and so people were quick to get upset, they were quick to anger, because they obviously were upset, they were genuinely upset, and I think that, no excuses, but it doesn't help.
I think that relegation season, we were never really in the bottom two till the last few weeks. We were always like above it, and we never actually
Yeah.
thought it ever would
No,
happen.
no.
And I think when it hit us, unlike Chesterfield's been there like all season. And
Yeah, yeah. Well, you see teams are just not good enough, are they?
We just never really got into them bottom two,
Yeah.
like the last probably half a dozen games, and then once we got in,
Yeah.
we just lost them few, and we never really got any thrashings. We
No.
either lost 1-0
Yeah.
or 2-1. I think our goal difference was like when they're like -19.
Yeah,
Someone's
yeah.
gone down with -40. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
But from a personal perspective, though, you were enjoying it because you were finding your feet, you were getting goals, you scored a hat-trick
Yeah.
that season, a couple of braces.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, I was obviously, you know, scoring a lot of goals, but you know, when the pressure was, you know, the pressure was on. It was really on. So you can't, you know, you don't enjoy it, and then you obviously don't enjoy the end of the season when you're relegated. You can't, you know, it's just not, you know, it's not possible. But yeah, I mean, it's like I still struggle to get my head around that, you know, because it
The
was.
side we had.
Yeah, because it was.
You scored 20 plus goals, didn't you?
26 goals, yeah,
That
yeah,
season.
yeah. I think I finished second behind Jack Lester.
That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
Sir Jack Lester,
Yeah.
as we now call him, obviously,
Yeah.
for guiding Chesterfield into the non-league. Let's turn it on its head a little bit. I mean, we mentioned Bobby Hassel earlier on. Viewers or listeners from last week's podcast will have been sitting there and thinking, Nathan, wouldn't they, when Bobby Hassel said about a certain food item when we were talking about coming here. He obviously mentioned the biggest house in Sheffield, which is not wrong. Remind us, Nathan, of what Bobby was talking about, and let's see if it's true.
See if it's true. I've got to see if I can remember it exactly, though. But
I'm trying to think of some stories about Bobby quickly.
You've got plenty of time, Nick.
Don't worry about that.
whenever you see, he did say, on, was it pre-match or post-match?
Post-training.
Post-training.
Post-training, that was it. So
Yeah.
You had a certain favourite food, didn't you? Can you remember that?
No, who was it? Go on.
Bobby said after every training session, because we were asking for some dirt.
Yeah.
And he, to be fair to Bobby, he was straight as a die and wouldn't give anything away. Really insightful chat, actually. And he said, the one thing I remember about Mickey, other than the fact he's got the biggest house in Sheffield, is every day after training, he would have a double chocolate chip muffin.
Really?
That's what he said, isn't it?
Maybe I did. But I was going to say that, like, most of my career I was like a real health freak, you know, with doing my diets and that, but maybe I did early on.
It's a good job now, Nath, that you didn't actually go and buy double chocolate chip muffins, because you did give them to Mick.
Yeah,
What are these all about?
No, that makes sense now, because
I put it on the message, didn't
you
I?
put it on the message, and I was like, do I go out and buy chocolate chip muffins?
I thought, because he didn't respond to it, and I thought, I don't think he actually knows what I mean by chocolate chip muffins. I thought it was quite interesting.
Unless Danny Reek said to him.
Because I was with Bobby at Barnsley as well, yeah.
Maybe he was thinking to your Barnsley days.
Yeah, but I mean, by the time I'd got there, I'd be like...
super health kit.
Yeah. I
Maybe.
can remember on the way to Barnsley, I used to stop at McDonald's and have a coffee and a bagel with cream cheese on. But I didn't realise that it was all Barnsley fans who were working in there. And it ended up on some forum that I was going to McDonald's before training every day. And it was like, but I could just imagine me sat there with like a Big Mac or something.
Is there anything which you think you wouldn't have got away with now? Just talking about a fan sort of putting it on a forum, obviously. With the emergence of sort of Twitter, Facebook, everything's a lot more sort of instant and interactive with players. Is there anything you think you might not have got away with when you were in your playing days, whether it was Mansfield or Grimsby or wherever you were?
I think players nowadays, like obviously when I started, you know, the first team, I think was, you know, 99, 2000. The older generation, they were, you know, still drinking and, you know, yeah, it was like that you know, that older mentality. And I think the younger ones, you know, even though they'd, you know, enjoy a night out or whatever, the professionalism had started to.
That's when Wenger changed everything.
The professionalism had started to really creep in, and you know, I just don't. I think like nowadays you can't I think if you want a career in football, then you have to do everything right. You have to do everything right. You have to act right. It's like now with social media, it's like, if you misbehave, and you do get, you get a few players give professional footballers a bad name. They give them a bad name by their behaviour, and it's like you have to be aware that people, everyone's got phones and cameras and everything now. So you're representing a football club, and it's like you have to act in the way that people expect you to act.
Within that Stags dressing room then, whether the first time round or the second time round, who would have been the likely one to sort of get up to no good and it'll be plastered all over social media?
Gary Tallon. Yeah. He was insane. Yeah, he was insane. He was great guy, brilliant guy. He was he was full of beans, and he was he'd be the one who'd get everyone going in the dressing room. He was just like a bundle of energy, but he didn't have an off switch.
Are we talking deep heat and under, or are we talking way, way worse?
Worse, a lot worse, yeah. Can you remember Lee Peacock?
Yeah.
I don't know if you should tell
yes,
this.
Yes, you should definitely say this. You can't not say it now.
Okay, so Lee and Gary are heading to Leeds in the car, and Gary's driving, and so he's farted, and then said, "I think I've shit myself." Yeah, and so Lee's like saying, like nearly got my head out the window and everything like that, and so Gary's put his hands down his jeans, pulled his hand out. He said, just obviously shit all over his hand.
Oh no!
Yeah, and so he said he's gone the whole journey with a crisp packet over his hand like that, and Lee said he's got his head out the car window. He said I was literally trying not to be sick. That was pretty standard.
That's standard.
He will not appreciate me saying this. Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe we'll have to get him on a future episode and try and find out some of those stories.
He'd be brilliant.
Wouldn't he?
Yeah, I think we'll have to get onto that and make that happen. Because I don't know about you guys, but I want to hear those stories.
Yeah, I do.
On or off camera, I want to hear those stories.
I'll message him.
I remember right, Lee Peacock's got Stags tattoos, hasn't he, on him as well?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not many.
Yeah, Lee. Yeah, Lee was a great player.
Yeah.
Really great player. Really, really good athlete. Yeah, brilliant.
It's interesting, as you were saying earlier about what you get away with these days. You wouldn't even be able to go to McDonald's for that bagel in the morning. So you look at Accrington this season. Can you remember it being all over social media about their chairman saying that he's going to buy them a McDonald's every time they won. And there was a massive outcry, wasn't it? Just over that, and it was massive, wasn't it? And I think that's how football has changed these days.
It's certainly a changing landscape. Yeah. What about you off the pitch? I mean, I did a little bit of research on you. I might be wrong, and I might be right. I know you went into property for a while.
Yeah.
Pilot's license?
Yeah, helicopter.
You do have a helicopter license?
Yeah. So I actually I had my license the second time that I came back to Mansfield, and all the lads kept wanting me to land a helicopter at the training ground.
It's an everyday occurrence now, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
with the Radfords and their helicopter.
Yeah. But I just thought I didn't trust the lads, because I thought that one of them would end up walking into the tail road or something.
Did you have a helicopter then? Did you?
I did for a period of time. Yeah. Had one. I lived out in the countryside here, and I had one for a short period, but it was just.
So would you fly into training rather than drive, or was it?
No.
Do you just sort of kept it away? You wouldn't trust the lads. You wouldn't trust the lads.
No, they'd probably play a prank on me and end up crashing it somewhere.
Prank taken a bit too far.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
But yeah, I wouldn't have done that. No.
And obviously, family-wise as well, obviously Rory played football with him, he played for Stags.
Yeah.
Sisters who play sports for Britain, Great Britain.
Yeah.
Helen as well, singer-songwriter.
Yeah.
Talent just runs through the Boulding genes, doesn't it?
I don't know if it's that or just a bunch of triads, I don't know.
I'm sure we wouldn't say that. Well, it's been certainly an exciting insight so far, boys, and we're going to find out a little bit more about Micky's time at Mansfield Town FC. We'll talk about that relegation season a little bit more. We'll find out a bit more about that. We'll also talk about certain FA Cup moments. Simon will tell us about that later on, and we're going to put you under the spotlight as we play the All About You quiz.
What terrible memories.
If you can beat Ian Boulding or Bobby Hassel. But first, obviously, this series is all about dementia and raising money for the Alzheimer's Society. So if you want to find out a little bit more about that, you can do. All the links and everything are in the description. Let's take a quick break.
I enjoy the work I do, so I'd like to keep going as long as I can.
Probably move to a farm area because I grew up on a farm.
Definitely important to have a lovely, happy family around you.
I'm hoping by then I'd have great nieces and nephews and things like that.
I'd like to travel.
I imagine skiing somewhere, which means I'm obviously assuming I'll be really healthy and able to ski at that age.
Dementia is the #1 killer in England and Wales, and there is no cure.
That's quite a shocking statistic now I've heard it. I do pride myself on the sharpness of my mind at the moment. If I lost that ability, I think that would be very hard to bear.
Your daughter has a 1 in 3 chance of developing dementia in her lifetime.
Right. That is a really horrible thought.
The state doesn't pay for dementia care as they would with other illnesses, such as cancer.
Right, okay. Well, that raises questions for me because I just think, why? Why wouldn't they?
I don't know how I'm meant to feel about this because if there's no solution, then someone's spending money in the wrong places, you know.
If your husband got dementia, a care home could cost you between £600 and £1,200 a week.
Sorry. Don't really like this alternative picture that you're painting for me. It's pretty grim.
I just think it says something about our society if we're not prepared to look after people when they get into their old age. It makes me very cross and makes me question what kind of society we want to be.
And that's a big reason why we're obviously doing this series for the Alzheimer's Society. As we say, the links in the description. Mick, thank you very much for obviously being involved with it as well. And I guess dementia is something which it hits everybody in some form as well.
My granddad, he was a professional footballer and he ended up with Alzheimer's as well. I went to an event 3 weeks ago and Jeff Hurst was there and he was talking about the 66 winning team, and how many of the players, you know, had ended up with Alzheimer's as well. You know, so it's just, you know, it's a crippling disease. You know, I'm not, you know, people have talked, you know, about the links with, you know, the footballs and heading the footballs as well. You know, whether that's, you know, brought stuff on. So, you know, but it is. You know, it's a you know, shocking disease.
It really is, and that's why we're encouraging people to hit that donate button in the descriptions of this, whether it's the video version you're watching or the audio version. All the links that you need are in the description, so please do give and help us raise money for a really worthwhile cause. We are here on a trip down memory lane, and we're here in Sheffield. Thanks very much to Micky Boulding for inviting us around to his fantastic house, which again is the biggest house in Sheffield. Verified by Bobby Hassel, he wasn't wrong. And it's that time of the show. You two know what's coming. It's time for the quiz. On a scale of 1 to 10, how competitive would you say that you are?
I'm very competitive, but I know what Bobby's like, so I definitely won't beat him.
Well, let me just try and find what Bobby got last week. We've got your questions ready as for you as well. I'll fill you in on what happens in that. Basically, it's 10 questions up against the clock, all about your career, predominantly your time at the Stags. So there's 10 questions on that. As I say, you're up against the clock, and if you get a question wrong, it's plus 5 seconds, but if you pass, it's plus 10, so it's always worth having a stab. Let's see if I can find Bobby's. I've managed to find your quizzes from the last podcast that we did, so I've got to go back a little bit as well. I've got all the... This is what happens when you don't do your notes properly and you just leave everything on top of your clipboard. Where have we gone?
Full season's worth of quizzes there, isn't there?
Yeah, it's a full season worth of quiz, which I've got to scroll back through. Bobby, I found Ian Bowling's. Ian Bowling is the current leader. He got 7 correct answers in 1 minute 19, but with penalties got a total time of 1 minute 39. And Bobby, he managed to do it he got 6 correct answers in 1 minute 29. So with the penalties, that's 1 minute 49. So would you like to try and get to the top of the leaderboard, or are you just trying to beat Bobby?
I just want to beat Bobby.
You just want to beat Bobby? Okay then. So we shall find out what happens then. Each former player will face 10 questions, all about them and their time at Mansfield Town FC. As I say, they'll go up against the clock, and the person with the most correct answers in the quickest time at the end of the series will be the winner. Saying pass will add plus 10 seconds, whereas an incorrect answer will be just 5. The time will start after I've asked the first question. I'll just say that for Simon's benefit, because he's on the time. He forgets. So, Micky, are you ready?
Yep.
Okie dokie. Simon, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, silence from the audience, please. No help from outside. No ringing up Rory for answers either, or any of the squad. Here we go. Mick, you had 2 spells at the club, the first starting in 1999. Against who did you score your first goal? Start the clock.
Shrewsbury.
You weren't the only member of the 1999-2000 squad to be part of the team that were relegated during your second spell. Who was the other?
Carl Muggleton.
During your second spell with the club, you were joined by your younger brother Rory. But how many league games did you start together in that total time? 3, 6 or 9?
3.
During the 2007-2008 season, who did you score a hat-trick against?
Shrewsbury.
Which defender left a nasty boot mark on you during the FA Cup 4th round tie with Middlesbrough?
Huth.
How many managers did you play under during your combined stints at the club?
4.
Who scored more for the club, you or Lee Peacock?
Me.
Jet Hall Germany. Jet Hall Germany is an anagram of which former left-back and teammate of yours? Jet Hall Germany.
Pass.
You and Rory went your separate ways after a spell together at Bradford. Who did he join?
Accrington Stanley.
One highlight of the 2007-2008 relegation season was the 5-0 win over Mansfield Town. You and Nathan Arnold got a goal each, but who got the other 3?
Brian.
Stop the clock. Okay. Let's have a little quick tot up of this.
You've done all right there.
Yeah, Nathan, how do you think you did?
I think he's done very well, actually. There's one, actually, which I think we need to go to the panel on.
I can't remember how long Lee was there.
Past one, but I think he got the actual answer. He said it under his breath.
Yeah, we might need to have a little steward's inquiry on that
one. I think we do.
The only one you got incorrect was the managers.
Oh.
It was 3, although you said 4, because technically it was 4, but one was the same manager.
Oh, yeah.
In Billy Dearden.
Yeah.
So it went Dearden, Shirtliff, Dearden again, and then Paul Holland.
Yeah.
So unfortunately,
that's good question.
I do try. It's usually thrown together, but there you go.
The anagram, I'd have been. I know I've seen it.
Yeah, because you can see the answer. Who did you say under your breath? Because you saw.
I was thinking of Jervis, Dave Jervis.
Oh, no, I thought
Jellyman.
It was Gareth Jellyman, yeah. So let's add up these. I've got to do maths now. So that's plus 10 for that, which is 1.
This is where it goes wrong, where Craig does math.
I can tell you, Mickey, you got 8 correct answers, including penalties, in a time of 1 minute, 38 seconds.
Oh, he's done it.
So
I think he's beat Bobby by a second.
No, it's Bowen by a second. Bobby was 49.
I'm going to find it now, yeah.
So I think it might be top.
Well, we'll put the results on screen, but just for the audio version, let's get this right. Yeah, Ian Boulding got it in 1:39, and then Bobby Hassel got it in 1:49, which does mean by a split second, you are the current leader of the It's All About You quiz.
You didn't expect that, did you?
No, by a second. I thought it did really well. I think it was the only anagram that really threw you on that one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I bet you didn't think at 9 o'clock this morning you'd be doing a quiz.
I know.
We weren't expecting it. You see, we never tell the players who come on. We never tell them that we're doing a quiz because then they'll always turn around and say, "Well, actually, I can't do it now."
Yeah.
So, next week on the show, we're going to have Jonathan Delaye on the panel. You would have played with JD in the second spell.
Yeah.
Same question we asked Bobby Hassel. This is how we found out about your massive mansion. What can we expect from JD? Is there anything you can dig up on him?
JD is one of the nicest men I've ever met in my life. He's such a great guy, and he was really good player. Nothing bad to say about JD. He's just
straight
really, really nice guy.
One thing about him as well, when he was at the Stags, he always, every Sunday morning, he'd go and watch all the young lads playing. It was a religious thing. You'd always used to see him every Sunday morning.
He was a proper person. Aside the foot, he was a great player, but aside the football, he was a proper person who, he took time to see how everyone was, and he was genuinely concerned.
So there's no stories from JD?
No.
He's got away with one there.
Yeah, he's got away with that. He's probably the only player I think on this entire series who's probably going to escape that, isn't he?
Yeah.
But look forward to
I always like how he used to turn people in midfield, because he had this thing about him. If he got his back to him, he could. Just to turn a pattern.
He was brilliant player. I mean, like when we play possession, no one get the ball off him. He was just one of those players. It's like, I played with a few players in training who'd got that, and he was right up there.
Fantastic. Well, we look forward to hearing some of his stories. Obviously, your second spell at the club, 2006, you came back. Just remind us how your sort of return came about then. We mentioned it in the first part, but let's just remind people.
Yes, basically I'd finished playing. I was at Barnsley, and I'd gone on loan to Cardiff at the end of that season. I finished playing at the end of that season. I was 29 years old. I'd fallen out of love with the game for whatever reason, and then I ended up going and training with Rotherham towards the end of that season with Alan Nill, and Rory had gone to Mansfield. Rory was training with Mansfield, and then through Ivan, Ivan was asking what I was doing, did I want to come back in and train in that, and so I came back, and it took me a little bit of time to, because you step out of the game, and it takes you time to find your feet again. It probably took me 6-7 months to really get back to where I'd like to be.
So I imagine it's a complete change of lifestyle. So am I right in thinking that between footballing spells you'd moved into the family property business?
I'd always been involved. So I'd been involved in business all the time, and so I went working in property full time, which is it's completely different. I tried to stay fit, but you can't. The fitness levels to play 90 minutes of league footballs, it's pretty intense. Sometimes it doesn't look it, but when you're on the actual pitch, and you're 10 minutes in and you can't breathe.
I mean, for me, looking back at that era, because we weren't a massively successful side on the pitch, but we had a decent squad, and I quite like Peter Shirtliff as a manager. What was he like to work under? Because he was obviously the assistant to Carlton Palmer, who had gone, and then he'd taken the reins. We ended up getting to the FA Cup third round against Newcastle, and we were doing all right. What was he like as a manager?
Shirty was a great guy. He was a great guy. He always played me on the wing, which
you weren't happy with.
No, actually, it's quite funny. I've never actually told anyone this story before. So I'd say to him, I'm a centre forward. Like, I've played at a lot higher level than this. I can score goals. Like, put me up top with Richie, and he'd be like, thing. I ended up taking him. I'm not a bit embarrassed about this, but I ended up taking him a DVD of goals in. Which was pretty embarrassing. It's like giving him, as soon as I given him, I was like, oh God. So the next day we're doing shape on the main pitch. I've gone over to take a corner. So the rest of the team's in the box. I'm at the corner flag, and he went, Mickey, I watched your DVD last night. Some brilliant goals on there. And I was just like, the rest of the team were like what? And I was just like, oh my God. He still didn't play me up front, so. But yeah, so I basically played that whole season on the left wing, which when you're left-footed, you do tend to get thrown out on that left side. But it was something. It's
almost a force of habit. Oh, he's a natural left footer, so he's got a bit of pace.
It happened to me again at Barnsley. I've been at Grimsby. I was top goal scorer at Christmas. Barnsley signed me. He was good, John Thordson, and he wanted to talk to me. So Grimsby said, "Yeah, you can go and talk to him." And he was like saying, "I'm going to play you on the left." And I was like, "What?" And he's like, and I was like, "No." And he was like, "Oh no, I'm going to play you up front. I'm going to play you up front." As soon as I signed, boom, straight onto the wing. And it was, and then it was only then Good John got sacked after like 3 games. Paul Hart came in, who also played me on the wing, and then he eventually put me back up front. And then he actually apologised to me for playing me on the wing, because I say to him, I'm a centre forward, and he'd go, "You're not centre forward."
How much hammer did you get from the lads after that training?
I think they're a bit confused. I think they're a bit confused about he's not. You can't have. It's like, but I was just
DVDs had only just come out.
Would have been quite funny if it were VHS and then your girlfriend or your missus had taped changing rooms over halfway through, and he said it was a lovely episode of Changing Rooms. What they did with that 2 up 2 down was great.
Extreme makeover.
But yeah, so obviously we lost Richie at the end of that season as well. But I think if we could have, slightly strengthened the squad, in a couple of areas, I think, we'd have been completely fine.
I think us as supporters listening to that, I think if in that sort of the season after that Barker mix, he went in the January, ended up going to Hartlepool. Rumours that he was sold against his wishes, that sort of thing. We'd love to find out if that is actually true or not. But him going there, obviously Martin Gritton and Barry Conlon came in. Did you ever think at that time that might be your opportunity to sort of go back up top? Because at that point, the manager was then Billy again.
Yeah. So Billy had come back in, and I think that Billy, I think with me, it's like when I went to Grimsby, I'd obviously had 2 seasons at Mansfield, and when I talked to Billy in the summer about re-signing, I was saying, I need to play matches. I need to play, and obviously Chrissy was the main striker. But we had played together, and we always played really well together. But I think a lot of the managers, especially then, it was like, neither is a small, but we're not 6'3", 6'4", and I think back then it was always a big guy with a smaller guy. Whereas I think now, because everybody plays it on the deck, you know, it doesn't really matter so much. But when we had played together, we played really well and we understood each other. But he couldn't, like Billy, he couldn't guarantee me. So I nearly signed for Huddersfield. Nearly signed for Huddersfield, but ended up signing for Grimsby. Yeah, so Huddersfield were in League One, and then I was training with them, and then I ended up. It was Lou Macari and Joe Jordan at Huddersfield, and I ended up signing for Grimsby. But it was another Ivan Hollett character named John Cottrell, who was at Grimsby, who took a gamble on me and invited me over. And what he said was, there's no guarantee, so I'd have to leave Huddersfield to go to Grimsby. And Lou made it very clear that if I went to Grimsby, I wasn't, you know, he didn't want to sign me if I went. You know, so I took a little bit of a gamble. Went to Grimsby. They chucked me on the wing for the first game. Played Donny, played terrible, was non-existent. Stood out on the wing, and I could see John afterwards. Lenny Lawrence was the manager, and he said, "I'm going to give you another game." And I said, "Please play me up front." And he said, "I've got 9 centre forwards." And I said, "Play me up front, and you'll sign me." And so he said, "Okay." We played against Blackpool. Played great, and I can remember looking up at the box after the game and I could see John beaming, and so I knew then that I was in there. So
it almost feels, as we're listening to your career stories, that there are so many times where the left wing striker situation is sort of, it could have gone one or two ways, because again, if you'd have been left out on that left wing, you might not have gone on to play for Grimsby and sort of build up your reputation a little bit more. And we might not be sitting here talking about this because you might have just hung up the boots and said,
"Yeah." Well, I mean, I loved playing. So if it had been left full, I mean, Lou wanted me to play left back, and like the games I played really well left back. You know, because I could obviously, you know, overlap on the wing, but I always felt more dangerous playing up top.
How did your move come about with Aston Villa then?
Well, I finished that season strongly at Grimsby, finished top goal scorer there, and there was obviously quite a lot of big games in the Championship that season. So I'd had Everton, had Middlesbrough, and I had Villa, who were all wanting to talk to me, and I ended up going to Villa first, and it was Graham Taylor, and I signed that day. So I talked to him and went and did a medical and signed.
Yeah. Was that like on a transfer deadline then?
No, it was summer. It was in the summer. Yeah. So he was the first person I talked to.
Well, they had a big squad at that time.
Yeah. It was Steve McLaren was at Borough, who had been keen, and then I'd had quite a lot of teams in the Championship as well. Like Palace offered me like a 5-year deal.
Wow.
But yeah, so I went to Villa, and like obviously a big. You know, like looking back, I think I'd have probably stayed in the Championship definitely another season.
Yeah.
You know, because I was on a bit of a roll, and obviously you go into a squad like Villa's, you know, and they've got so many players.
Yeah.
You know, that it was always a real task to break through.
And then you ended up going back to Grimsby and then Barnsley, and then eventually made your way back. To Mansfield, almost like full circle in some respects as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, 2 spells with Grimsby, 2 spells with Mansfield. He's sort of split down the middle when it comes to if you pledging your support to either one. Are they the 2 clubs which you look back on with the most fondness?
Yeah, definitely. It's like I really enjoyed my time at Barnsley and Bradford. You know, and I've got a lot of friends at Barnsley, but I always felt that Mansfield, Mansfield was was the club that gave me my chance.
Kickstart,
got so many friends there, and from there that, you know, like Bobby, you know, Bobby was my best mate then. He's the person that I've always kept in touch with. Grimsby, it was another similar club to Mansfield, where they have to build the success off getting, you know, some really, really good players for nothing. You know, they've not got the money that some of these other clubs have got just to shell out. So it was like a similar mentality where, you know, like obviously when I went there, it was in the Championship. You're playing against a lot of big clubs. It was normally the team talk each week. You'd be playing Man City or someone, and the manager every week would go, "I've seen them. They don't fancy it." Big timers. Every week was the same. But yeah, like, you know, Grimsby, you know, brilliant fans. Mansfield, brilliant fans. Both, you know, like proper football clubs.
What game for Mansfield actually stands out in your memory as your best one, and what would you say is the worst one?
I think well, the very first game I can remember playing for Mansfield. I'm trying to remember who it was. It was like a brand new stadium.
The 4-4 Macclesfield.
No, it was a pre-season game.
Oh, right.
But it was, what was the team that they were putting loads of money into in the Midlands? They were they got like a double barrel name. They've like gone.
It's not MK Dons, was it?
No, they've gone out of existence now.
Rushden and Diamonds?
Yeah,
Is it Rushden? Yeah. So it was Rushden. So it's that stadium there, and I can remember playing in that game, and it was, you know, it was a full house in that little stadium. And I can remember chasing, the fullback was trying to run the ball out of play, and I was chasing him, and all the away fans are behind that goal, and I can remember just giving him a shove. He was like, the ball's going out, but I just gave him a shove, and he'd gone over. And I can remember the fans and the noise that they made, and I can remember thinking, this is brilliant. I love this. Yeah.
Talking of stadiums, obviously you went through one of the rare ones in terms of the lineup we've got for this series, who've played at both the old Field Mill as well as and the new Field Mill One Call Stadium as it's now known. Just what's the differences then playing between the two in terms of the atmosphere and the way the ground was sort of set up behind the scenes?
Like obviously the old ground, the change rooms was underneath the main ground. Is that changed again now?
Because it's still
where So obviously the change room ended up behind the back of that stand. I mean, the old ground, it was a brilliant atmosphere, and it was the inner workings. They were ancient, but they got the big old bath in the change room. The change rooms were massive. That's one of the things. The change rooms were massive in the old ground. In the new ground, you couldn't swing a cat in there. It's they're tiny.
It's an interesting one. And let's talk about what happened at the new stadium then, Si. When you was obviously in your second spell, FA Cup run, fantastic run that year, probably the highlight of that season. To be fair, remember it well, Si, don't you?
I do. I'm sure Mickey does as well.
Yeah.
Robert Huth, size 10 in his chest.
What happened? Do you still have? Have you still got like a little boot outline of a boot mark?
I did though. He punctured. Yeah, he punctured my stomach with his with one of his studs. But luckily, I had my elbow was like tucked in, so the top of his boot, like he cut my arm because the top of his boot caught my arm. I think if my arm. So it was like the bottom two studs, like one of them, like just punctured straight in. But the second that he did it, I just thought my game is done. I thought
you played on as well, didn't you?
Yeah. But it was like you're obviously checking yourselves and that. But I think if my arm hadn't been there, I think it'd have been ribs that had just been.
Because us as fans, with it that happening, we were all like, "How the hell is he playing on?"
You didn't even get booked, I don't think, for that.
No,
did he say anything to you after he did it?
Because it was a TV match, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was on BBC. Yeah.
But with the referee, because the referee pulled us together and he came in, and obviously he was nowhere near the ball. You know, he'd come past the ball and then followed through some, and we were obviously both running towards each other. And I can remember him saying to the ref, I got the ball. And I was like thinking, I said, yeah, you nearly got both of them. Because he was so, he was obviously so close, half a foot lower.
Could have been worse.
Yeah. And the referee was like looking at me there. But yeah, at first I thought it was Wheater. And so I was looking at Wheater going, and he was like, no, it's... it was the other lump. Tough, uncompromising defenders, and it's, to be honest with you, accept it. I probably wouldn't have if I'd been stretched off with broken ribs, but I'd had a lot worse playing. I mean, the first time I broke my nose in 7 places, first time round for Mansfield. So,
what happened in that instant? Then talk us through that. I always sense when you're remembering these in your head, I can see this sort of glimmer of light in your eyes. If you say there's a story here.
Well, it was down at Barnet, so crosses flashed into the box. You could see it there begging. It's obviously at kicking height, but the only thing I could do was a diving header. So I've gone to dive, and then the next thing it felt like my face had caved in, so someone's kicked me full whack in the face. So I was, sparked out for however minutes. Came round. I can remember coming round, and it just felt like my whole face had caved in. And I went to feel my face, and it was just the tip. Ooh. I could just feel the tip, and I was like, for God's sake. And I can remember coming to the side of the pitch, it was like blood streaming, and all the Mansfield fans were there. And I can remember a guy like smoking on the front, and he like went, George, drag Micky, and I was like, but I found out half time that it was Darryl Clark who kicked me in the face. So he'd gone in for, I'd like seen it in after the game, and he's gone for gone to kick it, and just caught me full in the face. But so I came back on the pitch, and it was obviously back then. I mean, we were playing in white, and I was saturated in blood. Yeah. They're like giving me Baz had given me a hanky, and I can remember the referee coming over and going, "You can't run around with a hanky." So I can remember I got this hanky stuffed, stuffed up. So it was like, I think it was 5 minutes left. Like my nose was just all over the place. It was like floating. And then it's like you know it's bad when the opposition defenders are feeling sorry for you. Yeah. They're looking sympathetic. Yeah. And so like finished the last 5 minutes of that half, came in for half time. Billy went, "Are you okay?" And I was like, totally out of it. And I was like, yeah. So I was like given painkillers, sat down, and I can remember the doctor coming in and saying, "I want to see him." So I've gone into the doctor's room. He like got some tweezers, looked at my nose like that, and just went, "Get an ambulance now." And so I got a blood clot. Yeah. So I got a blood clot, and so I was rushed in to the Royal Free, and full strip on, boots on, pads. I'd got people.
I'm going to get another Ian Boulding story.
And I got people absolutely hammering me, because I think they're like people like shouting the score and.
Because you've been away from home as well. It's not on your local patch,
And so, come out the hospital, like phoned one of the lads later. So they like basically got rid of the blood clot and everything. They're like, So it's like, right, how do I get back to get the bus? Called up, halfway up the M1.
They left you there?
Yeah, they left me in London. Yeah. And so I've ended up like phoning my dad, and I was like, "I've been left." He was like, "Where?" And I was like, "Well, I'm in my full strip, sat in a hospital, like soaked in blood." And so my dad come pick me up, and we drove back. I can remember going into a service station, And I'd put some like tracksuit bottoms on.
I was going to say, did your dad bring you something?
I put some tracksuit bottoms on, and I think I was either just in my socks or I'd like got some trainers or something. And so I'd walked in, obviously got a football shirt on. Yeah. So, and people were like looking at me and like walking around me.
Probably thought you
and so my dad's like, he said, you look like you've just been in like a fight.
Did you ever get back to the club and have words with the management for leaving you in Barnet? Because it does feel like you've been abandoned in the capital.
Well, when I got back to, I was coming back towards Chesterfield, and obviously Billy lived there. I like phoned him. I was like, Gaffer, like, you left me, and he's like, yeah. And then he ended up coming to the bottom of the bypass at Chesterfield, pulled in, and he just like, it's not.
You're all right, Mick. You're all right.
You're like, it's not that bad. And that, but I mean, he was like that, Billy. He was obviously old school, so it was like I can remember breaking my hand. I think it was against Torquay. Broke my hand, and I'd scored like 3 or 4 goals in 3 or 4 games, and so, you know, Billy was like, "You're not coming up. You're not coming off. You like carry on." And like my knuckles were down here. I can remember at first I thought I'd dislocated them, and I was like trying to pull them out, but they'd obviously just snapped. And that was another one as well. I can remember going to the hospital after in Mansfield, Friday night game, come in my suit, like broken hand. You went, "Been in a fight, have you?" I was like, "No, I've been playing football." What, on a Friday night?
Yeah, of course you have, mate, yeah.
You've been in a fight. I was like, "No, I honestly, I've done it in a football match." They're like, wouldn't have it. No. They wouldn't have it, and so I've turned up. Yeah. Turned up Monday morning, full pot on. I just remember Billy like looking at it, going into the physio room. He was like, "Baz, get that cut off." And he was like, "You're not," because he was, you know, it was 6 weeks, and so I ended up. They made me like a plastic pot that I could put on for training, but I couldn't play in it, so I just had to bandage my hand up, and then they just like.
You're more safe.
I took away.
But you obviously, you know, as soon as the centre half sees your hand bandaged up,
you're on for a hiding.
They're like first thing they're gonna do.
I mean, it's interesting to hear about all the injuries, because Ian Boulding was the reason we say about we're going to have another Ian Boulding. Ian Boulding told us this fantastic story about when he was went into surgery, had to have a skin graft, and the doctor was basically said he was going to take it off his penis. And then he woke up and the surgeon had dabbed blood all around his groin to make it look like he'd...
Oh my God.
It was a good story.
Sick mind.
Seriously, get yourself on our Facebook page and have a look at the Ian Boulding episode, because that story is a fantastic story. If anyone's not watched it, you're missing out on an absolute classic, so catch up on that one. But I was going to say, one thing we never really, A, appreciate and B, really talk about as supporters is the medical staff, because listening to obviously Barry Statham was at the club for years and years as physio. It'd be great to actually get him on an episode. I know he still sort of resides in Mansfield as well, but how important is the medical staff there? Because you mentioned about the doctor pulling you in after the game, spotting the blood clot, because if that had not happened,
well he actually
scary.
said,
it is really scary.
What he said to the doctor was, he said, "I've seen this exact injury before and the player collapsed." And he said it was exactly the same. He said, you know, so he was obviously he was really on the ball. But yeah, I mean, you're in the hands of the medical staff. But to be honest with you, it's not something that really crosses your mind. You know, you probably wouldn't.
You see, sometimes you get some seasons when you have all these injuries and you think, oh, is that down to the training regime, or is it down to the fitness, or is it down to the physio? You get all these as well. We don't see what's actually going on. For us, it's like, you know, here we go again type of thing.
I mean, I think the problem is as well with football is you've got individual athletes who are all built completely differently. You know, their full makeup's totally different, and it's like every player needs something different to prepare them for matches, and I think that's creeping into the game now as well, you know, especially at the higher level, where, you know, and it's like I always, especially being a forward, all you want to do is shooting practice. Like that second season at my last season at Mansfield, when I was scoring goals, I was practicing finishing for an hour on my own every day, and it's like that's all you want to be doing. You don't want to be doing possession. You know, you want to be scoring goals or just constantly. So it's the only thing in your mind. You know, as a centre half, you want to be defending. You know, it's like obviously goalkeepers go and do their goalkeeping practice, but it's like individual people. And I think now the medical staff, they monitor players. You know, they're obviously training with heart monitors. They're monitoring them physiologically, and I think that they notice when players are under training or over training, and what different, you know, because you'll get one player who gets tight hamstrings, you'll get another who can do the splits and they've no problem with it. You know, so everyone's built differently. So it's like, you know, it's really individuals. Like I couldn't, like, especially towards the end of my career, I couldn't train on artificial. It was just like, you know, it was no good for me at all. And so it's like when they train on artificial, I'd say, let me go and do something else.
You know, when they put you through these army type training, when it's real proper fitness things, does that really benefit you as a player, or does it sometimes have the opposite effect? You know, if you're going to... Yeah,
I think team building, it's brilliant, but like you know, I know that actual performance is the most important. It's like having a really good team spirit is fantastic and it's great and it's important, but actually having, you know, if the ball drops to your bum, it's in the back of the net. That's more important than getting on with your mates and that. Do you know what I mean? So it's like for me, it's like I think that you want to be specialising in what you're doing. I mean, you know, and it's like going training with the army and that. It's like, you know.
You certainly strike me as the type of player, you mentioned it before about you always looked after your diet other than the double chocolate chip muffins and the McDonald's stuff. You always sort of, you strike me as a person who sort of likes to look after yourself when you were playing. Would you like to be still playing now and take advantage of that development in sports science and that side of the game?
Definitely. I think I read something, Rio Ferdinand was talking, and they're saying, what would you do differently? And he was saying lower body weights and yoga. And that's something definitely that I did later on in my career. And it's like the strength and conditioning work. It's like, you know, there's no point in footballers doing beach weights, even though they go and do it, but they're doing it to look good. It doesn't help football. It's like you want to be really strong in your lower body and your core, and you obviously want to be really flexible. And I think that's like I got into yoga later on, and that was something that, you know, really, really helped. And I know, like a lot of players, you know, Giggs, he really struggled with like hamstring injuries. He got into yoga and he ended up playing, you know, at the highest level up to 40 years old. You know, so I think all these things, they'll creep through, you know, through the leagues, and they'll just become part and parcel of you know, professional football.
Let's take you back to that final season at Mansfield Town. Obviously, it ended badly for us in terms of relegation on the pitch. Paul Holland, the then manager, released a book after he left, about a year or so after, Talking Double Dutch, where he had the squad list for the next season had he been appointed manager rather than Billy McEwen. Your name and Rory's was on there. Was there a talk to stay with the club?
Yeah, I mean, I went back for the first day of pre-season training.
Under Billy?
No,
McEwen?
Under Paul.
Paul took the first day of pre-season training?
Yeah, so I went back, trained. Paul then got pulled in after training, told he was fired. I'd talked to him in the car park after, and he was like, this and that, and I was like, you know, there's something's wrong here. Then I went to get my bag, and someone said, in between this, what was his name, McEwen?
Billy McEwen.
Billy McEwen, yeah. So Billy McEwen's just I'd like seen him before, like marching across the car park with his briefcase thing going in, and obviously Dutch has just been sacked, so it'd obviously been arranged.
So at the same
before.
time, this Haslam had agreed a deal to sell the club. It was originally going to be a local businessman, then it ended up being the three amigos who sort of, that's what they were dubbed, Andy Perry, that sort of thing.
Well,
so a lot of it went off behind the scenes, but...
Well, I mean, long story short, I had a brief conversation with Billy McEwen. You know, they said, he wants to talk to you. I said, I'm going home. And said, no, he wants to talk to you now. I was like, you know, I've come in to train thinking that Dutch is here, and then, you know, and there's, I'm not going to name names, but there was a few of these characters who I've not got anything good to say about any of them. And so I ended up having a meeting with him, and, you know, it wasn't gonna work at all.
It'd be interesting to find out what he was like as a manager, because obviously when we speak to JD, he did stay.
Yeah.
And for I think he stayed to the end of that season. Yeah. But it didn't feel right when he was appointed. It seemed I think it was like going back in time, you know, and you know, Keith, you know, a lot of people had a lot of bad things to say about Keith, but those characters who came in they weren't the type of people who should have been owning football clubs. You know what I mean? And one of them, I don't really want to talk about, but well, you know, they're pretty, you know, bullshit. Throwing the weight around.
Yeah, they're just
big egos.
I think it's just you know, it's that they're just rude, really rude. Do you know what I mean? And it's like you know, you treat everybody with respect, and I think it was, you know, they thought they'd bought the club, and it was like you're, you know, one of their skivvies or something.
Yeah.
But it was like that, you know, you want people in charge who actually know what they're doing, and they want to be taken on the club for the right reasons, you know, not to, you know.
Is it fair to say then that the conference side which we had in the first year, the majority of it was actually built by Dutch rather than Billy? Yeah.
I mean, I don't really know Billy that well, but he just seemed very old school to me, and you know, it was just the way everything was done. It wasn't right. You know, you do have to treat people with respect, and once you lose that, you know, the way they treated Dutch, you know, there's a way to treat people. He wasn't, you know, he walked in one door, and you know, it's like it was you know, it was confusing. It was really
I think
confusing.
from our perspective, boys, I think there's definitely a bit of sadness there towards Ditch, because like Ivan Hollett, he'd been there a long time as youth team coach, as assistant manager, as interim manager, as then manager. He was a bit of a club icon, I think it was fair to say. And I think a lot of us probably at that point did actually want to... It's not often when you get relegated that you want a manager to stay on, but I think a lot of us wanted him to see him.
I think even if Dutch had stayed on as coach, because he was a really good coach, and everybody really liked him.
Crucified more under them, though, wouldn't he?
Yeah. But he was like, it's like I wouldn't have wanted to have worked under those guys.
There was probably 3 or 4 players who probably turned up for that pre-season friendly and went the same way as yourself and decided to opt
it wasn't friendly, it was the first day of training.
Sorry.
So it was the first day. You know, went to train. Dutch was pulled to one side, so we've gone and trained, and then it was like, you know, people like, you know, a few rumours kicking off, and then got back and Dutch is in the car park, so I talked to Dutch, and he was just like, just been let go.
But in the right mind, who actually changes the manager at that point? It's before when the season's finished, ready, so they can get things.
Yeah, or you bring somebody in and say, we're going in a different direction, blah blah blah. Yeah. And then then days later you can bring someone else. But having people crossing paths just after you've been told, crossing paths in the car park, it was like, and then him dragging players straight in who've just had a training session with
a different manager,
it's going
to be them who takes them forward,
and talking as though, but it was just, it was
mind-boggling, really.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the season before that. Obviously, your last full season with the Stags. Keith Haslam was the chairman. We've been relegated. We've lost at home to Rotherham. You go in the next day, the day after the incident. I think loads of people will know what we're on about anyway. Is it true he nearly gets you and Alex Baptiste arrested? What's this story?
Well, it obviously isn't funny because everyone was really down and everything. But after the game, everyone had heard this that someone had got into the director's box and attacked Keith. And me and Bat, we was just stood in the corridor and we were just chatting and everything. And then just seeing two police officers come around the corner, and then Keith's come around the corner, and Keith's just gone, "This is them." Like that, and me and Bat were like, "What's going on here?" And he started laughing and that. He took it. I think he took it. I was going to say took it on the chin, but he did take it on the chin. I think, Keith, there's always a lot of animosity there from the supporters, and I never understood really, and it was obviously the financial workings, I suppose you're a bit ignorant to everything as a player, but on the surface and as a chairman to the team, he was always very reasonable. He never stuck his nose into the dressing room, which I've seen, which is really not helpful. Which
the ones after,
I know were
doing that,
banging on doors and everything. Well, they're actually doing it at the end of the season we went down. They were trying to drag people out of dressing rooms and stuff. But that's something else. But
it's certainly an interesting.
What it was you'd got for all for whatever Keith had done, you'd got a group of people who were 10 times worse taking over at that point. Obviously now the club is in stable hands. And it's going back, in the right direction. And I think, all that episode is behind the club now.
How much of an eye have you sort of kept on the progress of Mansfield since your departure then? Because it's obviously a club which means a lot. It means a lot to you.
Yeah. Like you obviously, I've got so many friends here. You constantly talking to people about, about what's happening. The leagues are definitely getting harder to get out of, because there's a lot more depth now, and everyone's building new stadiums. Everyone's got ambitions, So it's like it's really, really competitive.
So you were going to say before I quit you off?
I was just about to say who's probably the best player you've worked with and who's the worst.
Best player at Mansfield at Mansfield?
Yeah.
Best player, I mean, there's been some, forward, Chris Greenacre, brilliant, really brilliant player. Like when he was on form, he just got, absolute hammer foot. But he was a brilliant player, brilliant to play with. His whole play, he was a very unselfish player. So he was working for the team. He wasn't just interested in scoring goals. Liam, obviously brilliant footballer. Really brilliant. Hammy. I mean, some of the things that Hammy did in training, you know, he was like a fantastic player. But I'd probably say like out and out player. I'd say Chris Greenacre. Yeah,
I'd agree.
Who would you say the worst one was?
The worst?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
There's been a few. We might be here a while.
On the spot now.
How long have you got? No, the worst. It's hard to say really because you know you see some people and you know they come in and they don't do well for a team. And then they go off and
they'll write somebody else.
Yeah. You know, I wouldn't want to. Got a few in mind, but no.
Go on.
Yeah, no. I mean,
Danny Reed.
Danny is a class player.
Strong, wasn't it?
Yeah, he like Reety. He obviously had his weight problem. If he hadn't had that weight problem, he was a top player. A top player. He was always one of those people. I actually seen him in recent years. I ended up playing. Chrissy Waddle has got a team, and he's like a Saturday team. And he asked me to play the last 4 games. We were trying to get promoted. I ended up playing the last 4 games.
Up front or on the left wing? Where did you sit?
But ended up playing against Reety. Yeah, so Reety was there. And I mean, he's a brilliant footballer. Reety, really brilliant. But he had that weight problem, and I think it was.
That goes into your mind as well, doesn't it?
No, I think it was upstairs.
Yeah.
You know that what he needed some. It's weird to say this, but it's like sports people. They're all spoilt rotten, and it's like when you get a professional sportsman, you know, at some point they've had some serious TLC from a parent, uncle, coach. Someone's taken them under their wing. And it was like with Reety, I always felt that he'd not had that. He's like, his hero from Sheffield Wednesday, I can remember like talking to him was Adam Proudlock. And it's just like, you know, taking him as a role model. Yeah. It's just like, you know, disaster. Yeah. But he was like, he was a brilliant player. And I could, like, when I'd first seen him, I was thinking, this kid can sort his fitness out. He could have played at the highest level. Yeah. But it's like it's funny as a watching him because you think he's overweight, you know, he can't be any good. And it's like he was a brilliant player.
It's interesting to talk about sort of you thinking about how players can get better and things, but obviously post football you didn't go down the other route which footballers did in terms of coaching or management or broadcasting or anything like that. You went totally separate way. What was the thinking behind that?
I love playing. I love playing football, and I was never really that interested all the way through. Like I never did any coaching badges or anything. I was never interested in staying in football as a coach, and I think it was the fact that I didn't want to end up institutionalised. And it was like when you see people in there, you know, they spend their whole life in football. And they're just like, you know, they can't talk about anything else but football. Yeah. And I wanted to do, you know, other outlet. I wanted to do other things in my life. Like I love football, but I can let go of it and step away.
But that probably makes you appreciate it more, and you still love for the game. Where if you're stuck with it through all that. You know, management and all that it never goes away, and it's like
I genuinely love the game. Like I played tennis, but I don't love tennis. I love football. Like I always loved football. Like, you know, played football from a young age. You know, had uncles who played. My granddad was professional as well, and it was like, you know, it was my first love in life.
Who was your biggest influential person then on?
For me playing, my dad. My dad was. And from a young age, like one of my cousins gave me a video, and I've got a nappy on, and it was at my granddad's from Rotherham. He played for Rotherham United, played for York, and like I didn't even know this video existed, and so all the cousins sat there things, and you can just see me in the background, and I keep running past the screen in the background with nappy on playing football, and he's like running with me, but I can't ever remember him playing with me. No. But my dad and my granddad, my dad's dad, he actually, my granddad, he actually never got to see me play, and that's one of my biggest regrets, because all the way, he never got to see me play professionally, like all the way through junior football. It was my granddad who came to all the matches. Like my dad, he didn't really go to games, but he'd train with me a lot. And he, like my basic game, he taught me that. He was like finishing. He was like, every shot with your left, you then got to shoot with your right. You know, and it like, even though I'm left-footed, like I scored as many goals with either foot. And when I was,
I think you used to take penalties with your right.
Left.
So you take a couple with your. You favour your right foot sometimes as well. You were
not off a dead ball. I'd always go with my left off dead ball, but I scored a lot of goals with my right,
so
and
I
didn't.
remember you scoring a lot with the right.
Yeah, but I didn't. It never crossed my mind. Like I could be going 1-on-1 with the keeper, and I could just put it onto my right.
So a lot of
like
players would think, well, left foot's my favourite foot, so I'm always going to go to my left. You just shoot when it's a natural.
You get loads of players who are just so one-footed, and they get pushed one way, and it's like you're coming up to a defender, and it's like I can remember. Playing against Rotherham, and Coughlin was defending, and I can remember him saying, push him onto his left, because I'd had a shot on my right, and I was like, what? And it's like, boom, onto your left, and then,
bang, goal.
I mean, it's like, I mean, like that was, you know, the work that he did with me, and also as well as I always used to want to go and watch football when I was little, and he'd go, you're a player, not a watcher. And so we'd be on the bowl hills up here, and you could hear
the roar, the
Hillsborough. You could hear Hillsborough, like the matches, and I'd be like, can't we go to a game? Like the first game I ever went to was at Hillsborough, and he was a mate down the road. His dad took me, but they never played football together. But they went to the game, and that was the first game I went to, Liverpool game.
Being a United fan, I can always assure you that Mansfield Town have never ever lost to Sheffield Wednesday in a league match.
Fantastic. Well, it's been a really insightful interview. Micky, thank you very much for having us in your house. Nathan and Simon, there's been some fantastic stories, hasn't there?
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, another fantastic insight, and again, it's looking at a game from a different angle, and as from supporters, we don't always do that, do we? We sort of see what happens on the pitch, and you don't think about players being individuals at the same time. So it's it's always great to sort of look at it from a different point of view.
It's been fantastic. We've heard some insights into other players as well. Gary Tallon, we need to get him on an episode. Don't we?
Yes, we definitely do.
He'll be in a bar in Ireland.
Well, Nathan wants to travel to overseas to see Chrissy Green. There's quite a few players together at the minute, isn't there, in a tournament?
Yes, so the Hong Kong Sevens run at the moment. Chrissy's managing Wellington under 23s. Pilks is out there at the moment, but yeah, there's loads of players. I think Forest have got a team out there.
Yeah, I think John Thompson, I've seen an Instagram post from him, ex-Lake defender as well.
Yeah,
so maybe we need to get on a plane and get over there.
Let's drop pre-season in Portugal. We'll go to Hong Kong instead.
Yeah, that would be a good one. I'll come with you.
That's it. There you go, on a road trip with Micky Boulding.
In his helicopter.
You can play us.
A bit far of that.
There you go. What a road trip that would be. Well, if you've enjoyed listening to Micky's stories and listening to everything that he's had to say, make sure that you do donate to a fantastic cause in the Alzheimer's Society. All the links that you need are in the description, so make sure that you check that out. Thanks very much to Mick for bringing us down here. Thanks very much to Simon and Nathan as well, and of course thank you very much to Micky Boulding for letting us into his house and run wild for a couple of hours. It's been fantastic, and as always, let's leave the final word, the final message to the Mansfield Town fans, to today's guests on a trip down memory lane with Micky Boulding.
Brilliant. Do you want me to say something?
Yeah.
It was just thank you so much for giving me a football career for a start. You know, I've had so many amazing memories, and I would love to come back and watch a promotion game next season.